this is Dread from Epic Builds, and in today's video topic, we will go over Multiform Werebear Swarmblade Spell Damage Retaliation Summon Bear Druid, or for short, MWSSDRSBD or MZBZ, a response to a viewer request who really wanted Multiform Druid to be a thing. Before we get into the video, if you've been enjoying the steady flow of Last Epoch content of late, I'd suggest leaving a like on the video, as that's the best way to support the channel. So the idea behind this build is abusing certain mechanics. So Swarmblade has a node inside its tree that allows you to proc a companion ability every time you use Swarm Strike. This ignores companion cooldowns respectively, which normally means you can do stuff like having 100% uptime like Wolf Howl's buffs or infinite bear taunt. Imagine removing taunt from the game with long cooldowns just to add it back in. This will probably get nerfed. We then swap to Werebear Form, which first uses Warcry, which gives our bear a bunch of critical strike chance while also healing us and him. This is most of our sustain. We then utilize Maul, which procs an Entangling Roots, which if it hits the bear, it gives him 20% base crit and 50 flat for all of the spells, and this combined with the flat adaptive companion spell damage at the top of the bear, 40 to be exact, allows us to scale his damage to insane degrees. Summon Bear himself has a retaliation element. When he takes a certain amount of damage, he retaliates with Ice Thorns, which is pretty good AoE and leads to clearing most of the screen most of the time. He also has a range attack which lets him do significant damage to a single target at the cost of making Summon Bear act like a ranged minion, which isn't that bad considering that he gets targeted anyways thanks to his taunt, which is pretty much procced constantly. Since we're swapping forms so much, we don't care about rage generation much, which saves us room for everything else we want to run in the build. We simply swap back between forms whenever we're close to rage loss. Even if we lose form, by the time we run out of rage, the next form should be off cooldown and when we are human, which means we can just immediately go back into form. This rotation leads us to being able to use Bear to take all the hits, while also giving him a huge amounts of damage. Losing Bear Taunt would suck because it would be harder to get him to retaliate against enemies, and losing Werebear Form would be significant damage loss to use, losing Entangling Roots entirely. Summon Bear might be a very old skill, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun until they inevitably rework its tree entirely. Overall, I was pretty happy that a multi-form build was actually not just viable, but preferred in this situation. A good success through and through, and can easily be min-maxed into something great. With all that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? Alright, here we are in-game with the build. So the general skill rotation is obviously first, every single time we log in, we're going to summon our bear. And then we're going to start off with Swarmblade Form. Why is that? Well, Swarmblade Form, whenever we use Swarm Strike, will proc his bear taunt, as you can tell, which means everything will taunt towards him and start attacking him. Then we swap over to Anger Swarm, which will turn us into a Werebear, which will then use Warcry, which will give us our bear crit, and then we will proceed to do Maul, which will create a Entangling Roots. Then we simply roar again, which will allow us to turn back into a Swarmblade, and then we rinse and repeat the process. And of course, we take advantage of Swarmblade's better movement as well. And that's it. And he does pretty okay damage, considering. Like, as you can tell, he's doing pretty good damage when, he actually hits. It's pretty nice, isn't it? Nice to see Bear doing so much damage. It kind of depends how many mauls you get in. But yeah, he does plenty of damage. As you can tell there, I got kicked out of form, which is completely fine. It happens. Yeah, we do plenty of damage. So his AI is a little dumb. What I mean to say with that is generally to pretend a pack is like right here, like pretend a pack is here, pretend we start over here. Generally, what he's going to do, as you can tell here, he will attack at range. His AI is dumb. So you see how like he's attacking at range? This is the perfect range for his Ice Thorns to attack. So for instance, if a ranged enemy is hitting him from here, his Ice Thorns won't actually proc, won't actually hit him, it hit enemies. So to combat this stupidity in AI, what we do is we just drag the bear with us. And what will happen is we'll just drag him with us, And as we move through the pack, we'll just simply set up a Swarm Strike and then he'll be good to go. So we have to kind of like leash him through a pack and then set it up because you want him to be in the middle of a pack because that will make him the best. Now, one problem with this build is Entangling Roots does kind of like immobilize enemies, which means that when we hit someone, we immobilize them. So there is a very good thing to be said about not running Overgrown Garden and just running the running the cone version instead, which will hit him instead. There's a very good argument in doing that so that we don't actually get the immobilize, which would, not be terrible, right? So I'm not entirely sure how to go about that. I haven't really figured that out yet. But maybe we don't run Overgrown Gardens so the whole screen doesn't get hit, but that means you have to aim your mauls. So it's really up to preference. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the skill rotation. So for the skills for Summon Bear, this is completely new to me. This is the first time I've ever played Summon Bear. So 1 point travel into Thick Hide, 1 point into Retaliatory Thorns. So whenever he takes 75 damage, he will retaliate with a big thorn. Big ice thorns, which will pretty much clear the entire screen in most situations, especially if he's sitting on a dot. This works for dots. This works for anything where he takes damage, and he will puke out that many ice thorns. And of course, 4 points into winged thorns, so that our thorns travel faster and in a bigger range, so he hits more of the screen. 3 points into lacerating claws, so that you do 45% more damage with all of his stuff. Then 1 point into Thornbear. This will give him the attack, the ranged attack. Like I said, though, the problem is with that is it makes him attack as a ranged minion. But if we don't have this, then we have no single target. So all in all, there's not really much we can do in that regard. We grab 3 points into Barbed Thorns, so we have a chance to double damage, which is really strong. Then 4 points into Rabid Thorns for cast speed, so he casts faster, right? So he does more single target. And then 3 points into Primal Precision. This caps our crit alongside Entangling Roots and Warcry, making it so his stuff always crits, which is, of course, very strong. And that's pretty much it for Summon Bear. Now for Werebear Form, we take 2 points travel into Territorial, 5 points into Enrage, makes it so we gain a bunch of rage when we hit enemies, so we can possibly do Maul twice before we swap into Swarmblade Form. Of course, 1 point to Barrage of the Storm, so that we turn back into Swarmblade whenever we use our Swarm Strike here, and then we'll use our Roar, which will make it so we can turn into Swarmblade, and vice versa, and it'll swap us between the two. 2 points travel to Fear of the Maul. We want as much cooldown on this as possible so we can spam Maul because of the 5 points in Wild Command, which gives us 200% increased minion damage and it stacks. So the more times we Maul, the better. We definitely want to be mauling as much as possible so that he gets as much damage as possible, right? So that's nice. 3 points travel into Pummel and Bash travel. We don't really care about this. Then 1 point into Woodland Bear. That makes it so whenever we use Maul, we also cast Entangling Roots as well, which will proc Entangling Roots. Then for Swarmblade Form, the only nodes that matter is Inspiring Swarm, that make it so that a random companion ability after Swarm Strike, which is Bear's Taunt, that's why we're only running Bear, is for Bear Taunt. Then, of course, 1 point into Swarm's Fury. So it makes it so that whenever we attack with Swarm Strike, we can swap back into Werebear Form and vice versa. And that's pretty much how we pretty much go through forms like that. And that's pretty much it for that. Warcry, it's your stereotypical ally buff tree. We're going for, of course, the cooldown nodes, the attack, the crit chance here, the crit chance here. This combined with all the other crit chance everywhere else, like in Entangling Roots and in Summon Bear itself, this is enough crit chance to cap us out. We then, of course, run some HP. This is all of our sustain. Whenever we're at low life, we just instantly heal back to full with a little bit of healing effectiveness, which I think I have. Yep. And this also keeps our Bear topped off as well. I've only ever seen Bear die once, which is pretty cool. And of course, that's pretty much it for Warcry. Nothing really different there. Then for Entangling Roots, we take 2 points travel into Shredding Vines. 1 point, although the Fizz Shred does apply because his All of his attacks were like Fizz mainly. 1 point travel into Nourishment Surge. This is boosted by handling effectiveness, but doesn't really matter for us. 1 point travel into Wild Weapons. This applies to all of his spells and stuff, which is nice. It doesn't stack. 5 points into Bush Stalkers for base crit and crit multi, which is really cool. This is the only reason this build functions. This is the main reason to be a druid, is for the base 20% crit chance. Otherwise, you're forced to go Poison Bear and Beastmaster. And of course, we couldn't do multiform or use Druid form or use a Werebear or Swarmblade. Then 5 points into Blooming Magic for 40 ally adaptive spell damage, which is nuts. And that's pretty much it for Entangling Roots. We obviously get the circle node so that, you know, we make sure we hit Bear. Although, like I said, we might go for just the directional node. Depends. It really depends. And that's pretty much it for Entangling Roots and all the other skills. All right, let's talk about passives. I'm kind of new to this build, just so you know. 6 points into Gift for the Wilderness for HP for both us and our minions. 3 points travel into Primal Strength, although Strength is pretty good for our Summon Bear, which I can show you in a second, because it does scale his health significantly, which is nice. Here you go. Oh, there you go. Delete our Bear real quick so I can show you. Yeah, he gains a bunch of HP off his Strength, so stacking Strength is good for us. 1 point travel into Primal Medicine, 5 points into Hunter's Restoration for the HP, 5 points into Ancient Call to give us even more increased minion health, 5 points into Berserker to give us more EHP when we're at low life. Then for Beastmaster, it's your stereotypical Beastmaster setup. The only difference is we're gaining the Chase, so you get a bunch of minion cast speed, which will apply to the Briar Thorns that the bear is throwing out, which is nice. Then for Druid, we take 3 points travel into Endurance. We get a little bit of Endurance, of course, to cap our Endurance. I don't think I need that anymore because I changed my gear. 7 points into Spirit Warden to get a bunch of HP for us. 6 points into Druidic Prowess. Like I said, stacking Strength is good for us for bear HP. 3 points travel to Focus Wrath, and 1 point into Rancor for Quality of Life, so we don't lose Rage out of combat. 5 points into Winds of the Leaves so that we get a bunch of minion cast speed, which is important for us. 8 points into Aspects of Might so we can get a bunch of strength for our bear, for more HP for our bear. 10 points into Force of Nature for even more minion spell physical damage, which is nice. 1 point travel into Woodland Beings. Then 1 point into Natural Duality. I just want to make sure. I am grabbing the Solo Companion node that gives us a bunch of more damage, by the way. I forgot about that. And then, of course, this node as well, which gives us a bunch of more health. Then 10 points into Eternal Nature. This is the node that kind of makes the build function, the companion spell damage. And of course, we take 4 out of 10 points in Hide Skin because we don't have enough to fill it out. And that's pretty much it for Druid as well. We are pretty tanky. We could swap to a shield and be completely fine. For gearing, I am using a staff. You could use a shield and a one-hander. It's really up to you if you feel like as though you have enough damage. I felt like as though I have enough damage, but, you know, of course, you know me, I'm a damage whore. So for the helmet, you want cooldown recovery speed and cooldown recovery speed while transformed, because this makes it so that your transforms actually have less of a cooldown here. Otherwise, without that, it would take a little bit longer to cool down. So we shave out about a second per transform, which is really good for us because we want to be rotating through forms quickly. Then, of course, HP and endurance. Death Rattle's really strong for us because we don't really care about the take increased damage because Bear is so tanky, and we want the minion crit multi. So this is like one of our best in slots and a really good slot for legendary potential. Weapon, you can use +1 to minions, doesn't really matter. Like you don't really need anything other than a staff with minion physical and minion spell, right? Like I have here, these drop like candy, especially if you farm the dungeon. For chest, vitality, minion health, health, and health. This is perfect. Absolutely perfect. This is all you want. For the rings, you want strength, minion health, or minion damage, and then resistance, crit avoid, or, you know, endurance. Belt, minion health regen mainly. You can run a +1 with the Thornslinger and ensure run minion health regen on it, but it's up to you. Cleanse is of course always nice, or you could run minion health. You don't technically need the cleanse because you can always boost into Purging Shout and also healing allies. You don't really need this cleanse technically. Then of course health regen. You want HP actually there. Then for the ring, strength, minion health, minion damage, resistance, like endurance, like crit avoid, whatever. And for the gloves, minion health, strength, or cast speed, it helps a little bit too. Resist HP, crit avoid, stuff like that. Boots, like movement speed, HP, crit avoid. I went with movement speed boots instead of the HP boots because I felt like, so I was tanky enough. I just wanted to be able to move through monoliths faster and to leash my bear faster. This is pretty much your perfect relic. The only problem is you actually want to be on a living seed base relic. I don't think I have one. I'd have to go find it. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So living seed base is, I don't know where it is. Spriggan seed, that's not what we want. We want living seed. This one. So this damage leech on health hit, this is like one of the best ways of getting leech on her bear and will literally make him immortal. So you definitely want this base instead. But as you can tell in the footage, even without that, he was still pretty much immortal. So you don't technically need that. It's just that's really good quality of life and means you don't need as much healing effectiveness for your bear and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it for the gearing. And that's pretty much it for the build. Like I said, I know this is a very rough outlook of a build, but it's because I'm new to this, like to Summon Bear in general. There are people who play Summon Bear more than me that I actually asked about for knowledge about Summon Bear, and I'm still learning the kinks and tricks of the trade here. I know Tunk knows a lot more about this. I know Flintler also knows a lot more about this. I'm not necessarily like an expert when it comes to Summon Bear. So if you have been playing Summon Bear for years now and you saw something different, please tell me. Or of course you can always just make the changes yourself. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at, and bye.